really appreciate it, everybody. Before we get started on the main part of the meeting, there are just a couple of quick announcements that we have from two of the groups. Jill Riemann would like to give us a real quick update on what's going on with one of our favorite fundraisers. So, Jill?
Thank you, Bob. I just want to announce that we now have solidified a rummage sale date. It will be Saturday, April 30th. We will start setting up probably right after Easter, the Monday after Easter, so hopefully we'll have a couple weeks of setup, somewhat similar to what we did in the fall, which is exciting. We have never had a rummage sale. We're trying to get back into our spring schedule, and we had one in the fall, as you all know, so we've never had a rummage sale where we've only had 6 months to gather items. We have a great group led by Lynn Zwaska. It's Karen Short, Katie Stevens, Mickey and Rob Kellner, and they're coming in weekly to sort rummage. So please sort through closets in this cold, icky weather, put on a jacket, go up into the attic if you need to, or in the garage, and start bringing things in. There's a drop zone table right when you go into the unfinished space. That room is locked, so you can get a key from the office, or you can just drop it right outside of the door, and we'll know it's rummage. We also have a great opportunity where the alternative high school that is housed in our church has some kids that are in need of volunteer service hours. So starting this Wednesday, they're going to work with with Lynn, and her team, and also with Mick Van Every. He's going to help them. They're going to sort a bunch of hangers for us. So we have a lot of need for more rummage. Please consider talking to your friends, family, and asking them if they're sorting through things, if you could take their rummage and bring some deliveries to church. We would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. The next group that would like to give us a quick update is the Pastoral Search Committee. Deb Bersinger, please. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. If you were here on Pageant Sunday, we gave an update at that time, and we don't have a lot to add, but for those of you who weren't here, just a quick recap of our last 12 months. The group formed and started meeting in March of last year, and we have met pretty much every week. We meet Sunday nights. The first several months, we spent time organizing, gathering information, our survey that you all were offered, and we looked at the results, and then we also compiled that, and we put together a profile. And that profile got posted September 1st with the conference. And one thing I want to mention that we're pretty proud of is that several candidates who have reviewed our profile have mentioned that it's very well written, and also that it's honest, and that they appreciate the honesty in our profile. So what does that mean? I think what they're saying is that we were not afraid to identify our challenges, as well as to promote our strengths and the good positive things we have in church. But I think our committee felt that the best policy was to try to get candidates who are coming in with eyes wide open about what some of the challenges and struggles are with our church, as well as the positive things. So we've gotten really good feedback on our profile, and so we're pretty proud of that. We started in January. We started before January to actually have Zoom meetings with candidates who are interested in our profile. So that technology has been really great for our search committee to be able to see candidates from all over the country, frankly, and so that really has worked well. And we are excited that there are several candidates that are very interested in our position and that we feel are, good possible fits for our church. So we're pretty excited, and we're very hopeful going into the next few months that we are going to continue to get some profiles and to just be in discernment about who's going to be our next pastor. So we're very excited, and we hope that you are, and we'll keep you updated. I think that's about it. Does anybody have questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Joe, and Deb, appreciate the update. One of the very, I think, special traditions that our church has during this annual meeting that we do is we look back on the year and remember and pay respect to the members and friends of our church that we lost. So we want to do that now. Tom, could you start the first, and these are in chronological order. Harlow Ferris. Next is Roberta or Bobby Protzman. Laura Andries. Lois Apple. Jane Sweet. And John Durkin. At this time, I would ask Pastor Barry to say a remembrance prayer, please.
Holy God, Lord of life and death, you made us in your image and hold us in your care. We thank you for these your servants and the gift of their lives, and for the love and the mercy each of them received from you and then gave to us. Grant that when our time on earth is ended, we may be united with those who have passed before us and with all the saints in the joys of your eternal home. Holy God, we pray this through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Barry. The format of the annual corporate meeting is such that each minister, each ministry, each project group and committee submits a report that is included in the annual report booklet that you all have and have had for several days now. It's my hope and our hope that you've taken the opportunity to review these reports, because we will be voting. Part of what we do is we vote to accept all of those reports as part of this meeting. So the first ones are the minutes from the annual corporate meeting from last year at this time, along with the spring and fall meetings that we had. They're found, all those meeting minutes are found on page 4 through 21 of your booklet. There is 2 errors in the printed booklet regarding the 2021 annual meeting that need correcting. The date in the title of the meeting on page 4 reads 2020. It will be corrected to read 2021. The second error is on page 8 of the booklet. And at the very bottom, the clerk that signed that should read Rochelle Bailing, not Pat Evans. So, are there any comments about any of these minutes from the prior meetings at this point? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve as submitted with the corrections mentioned. I'll entertain a motion to approve these minutes. Okay, I've got a motion. How about a second, anybody? We've got a second. Any comments or questions, concerns, anything? Okay, I'll call for a vote then. All in favor? Say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, motion passed. All the meeting minutes have been approved. Okay, the next part that we're going to go through is the treasurer's report and the 2022 budget. And I hope the technology is working. We might have one of our treasurers with us. But as most of you know, our two 10-year veteran treasurers are retiring after a long, long run. And the first thing I want to do is give them a wholehearted thank you to both Jim and Bill Palm for their dedicated service. 10 years is a long time, and they did great. So, well, there he is. So you're not on the beach, Jim.
There. Hello, everybody.
So,
I'm going to try to...
So Bob Frick has stepped up and is going to be one of the new co-treasurers, but we still have an opening for a second treasurer. So anybody want to raise their hand? All right, well, we are working on finding a second treasurer. So the budget committee that put together the budget is under the direction of the admin ministry, and the members of that committee this year were Jim Natalizio, Bob Frick, Dan Moldenhauer, Chris Moll, and myself. So I now call on Jim to give us an update on our financial situations, including the preliminary, and I stress preliminary results for 2021 and the budget.
The year was quite a success from a financial standpoint. I know there's a lot of challenges on other aspects, but the pledges came in ahead of what we budgeted. The unpledged came in ahead, as well as the hearts and hands amount. So that was all great there. We had great fundraisers. The golf outing was ahead. The rummage sale was a great success. The car show was ahead of budget as well. The youth fundraising was also ahead. The youth fundraising, the golf outing, and the car show don't really affect the budget. Those are, the golf outing went to Family Promise. The car show goes to the Rich Failing Fund for the youth, and youth fundraising goes to the youth. So those don't really affect the budget, but the rummage sale did. And like I said, everything else was pretty much ahead of budget. So we had a good year. The expenses, the only problem was the furnaces that gave way and we had to replace. So that was about $30,000 that we weren't planning on. So let me see if I can find it. Where did that go? Right here. The repairs and equipment, $33,000. We only budgeted $5,000. So other than that, everything went pretty much along what we had expected. So we put all that together and we end up with a $31,000 profit. That was mainly because of, well, all of the great success we had on fundraising, but also the PPP money came in this year. So that was $45,000. Without that, we would have been $15,000 lost. So you say, well, what do we do with the $30,000? Well, over the years, we've had many years where we actually ended with a loss. So that always put our cash position in the hole. So if you recall, at the end of the year, we a lot of times had to draw on our line of credit, or in the recent past, we drew on the prepaid pledges of December. So a lot of times we would have, let's say, $50,000 of prepaid pledges. Without that, we would have had to draw on a line of credit. So this, with the $30,000 profit, we actually are in a $10,000 surplus. So we actually have $10,000 more. We made up that deficit from the past losses, and we actually have $10,000. So very good success this year. We were able to put $10,000 into our capital improvement fund. If you recall what that is, that's the pot of money that we're going to hopefully build up to pay for big expenses. Something like these furnaces could have been one, but also the big looming area of improvement is the parking lot. That is going to be somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000 when we do redo that. So one thing I did not mention up back here in the fundraisers, we did have a little mini fundraiser for the furnaces, which we raised $15,000. So that was fantastic to get that extra money in to help offset those extra costs that we were anticipating this year. So I'll stop there, see if I can hear any questions or get any chats on that before we go into the budget.
No questions at this time.
No questions. Amy, there's no questions.
Nothing at this time. Okay. Well, I will just jump right into the budget then for next year. It's not really too much to chat about there. We're hoping to have $236,000 of pledges that come in. We're keeping the unpledged at the $50,000 as well. We did get a new gift in this year for $23,000. And we also have an estate gift that came in at $7,000. So that certainly helped keep the income side of things up. Our current pledges are $228,000, which gives us an $8,000 shortfall. We're hoping to get more pledges in. As a matter of fact, from the time we printed this to now, we got another little over $3,000. So the shortfall is down to $4,000. We're hoping to continue getting the rest of the pledges in and to have a balanced budget. But currently, it's just a little bit short. A couple of the key things here is we were able to give the staff a 3% raise. We did take the golf outing, which last year 100% went to Family Promise. This year, we were planning on doing 50% going to Family Promise and 50% staying in the budget. Other than that, we don't know what's going to be happening with the pastor, when we're actually going to get the new pastor in. We targeted April 1st and put in the credit that would be associated with that. Obviously, if it happens sooner, which probably is going to be difficult to happen before April 1st, but it could. The savings would be a little bit less, and if it happens after April 1st, the savings would be a little bit more. But for the most part, we plug that in there. Also, we don't know exactly what the salary is going to be, but we think that is a pretty close estimate. Other than that, everything else is pretty much in line where it has been in the past. And we do, like I said, we do have a balanced budget if we are able to get that $3,000 or $4,000 more in pledges. Any questions on that?
Coming to a call.
Is this on? No. Mic number 6. Whoa.
yours working, Fred?
Is mine working?
Yes.
Yes, this is George Moeller. Jim, I had one question that I didn't quite understand. When you're looking at the pastor salary items, there's a deduct for housing in there that for $14,000. I don't understand what I know what that means, but why are we deducting? Are we effectively reducing his salary from 70 to 60, 56?
Go ahead.
Do I have to repeat?
No, that's actually where we're just using that line to show the credit for him or her not being here for that first 3 or 4 months.
Right.
So the housing, the housing designation is really kind of misleading. It's not, it doesn't have anything to do with housing.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Okay, no further questions, so could I get someone make a motion to approve the preliminary financial statements? And I want to urge you, that these are preliminary pending the review that will be done. So we're not really voting on the financial statements this year because they have to be reviewed and we'll be voting on those. See you, Jim? We'll be voting on those at our spring meeting. So what we're voting on and what the motion needs to be for is to approve the budget for 2022.
So moved.
So we have got a motion. How about a second? Jim Sajak says second. Any further comments, questions? Yes.
Mickey Kellner, there's a spot for a tech coordinator that's for $0. Do we have a tech coordinator, or are we looking at getting one?
It's a good question. If you turn around and look at the man in the black mask that's waving his hand, we have got a wonderful tech coordinator who is being very generous with his time. And we're not compensating him with dollars, with just a lot of thanks. So thank you, Tom. So that's why that's a 0.
Okay.
All right. Okay, I'll call a vote. Those that want to approve the budget as stands, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carried. We have a budget. Your staff is saying thank you because now they can get their raise. Actually, and that's true, I didn't realize it. I assumed any raises start January 1st, but they don't because you all have to approve the budget before that happens. So, okay, the next section is we need to approve and talk about all of the reports from the ministers, the officers, the ministries, committees, and project groups. All those reports start on page 22 and go through page 51. So I would ask to start this conversation, if there's going to be one, I would ask for a motion to approve all of those reports as a group. Anybody make that motion? John Kyle, thank you. I need a second. Rochelle, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments or concerns about, I know that's a lot of information, And hopefully you've had a chance to, in your spare time over the last week or so, look at these. Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Let's take a vote. All those in favor of approving all of those reports, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None, so motion passed. So all the reports are approved. The next area is the 2022 goals for the leadership team. And those are on page 52. First thing I need to let you know is due to an error on your moderator's part, whoever that is, that was me, the church mission that's shown on that page is incorrect. It's actually the mission we had before we made changes in 2020. Our true mission statement and the correct mission statement is on the inside front cover of the book. That's the updated, the current mission statement. So and that was a mistake on my part. I apologize. So our goals for the year are in that report, and I'll just quickly run through them. We want to increase our support to our ministries from leadership, and really try to do a better job communicating between the ministries and leadership. It's the last couple of years has been hard because some ministries are not meeting, or because there's like right now, like the welcoming group who does all of the stuff for our coffee and things afterward. We're not doing that, and so there's been some ministries that haven't been meeting, and some are doing Zoom, some are, it's been, those are to some extent excuses, but it's been hard to do real good communication, but we plan on really trying to step that up this year. We've also got the two new groups that were formed last year, the membership committee and the communications committee that are really getting started, and we're looking for additional people to become involved in those groups because there's not enough members yet. So if anybody has an inclination where they'd like to get involved with that, we really could use some help in those areas. Part of that is the collateral material we have for the church is stale and out of date in some cases, not all of it, but part of what we want to do is we want to present a consistent message, not only to our members but to the community, whether you're looking at our Facebook page, our website, or come to church and grab a brochure that's on the welcoming table. Right now there's a lot of inconsistencies between those. I don't say they're wrong, they're not consistent. We also want to continue doing the best we can to support the Pastoral Search Committee. And then new is, not new because we've started working on this already, but we are using old technology in some areas, whether it's in the office or up here. And we've started by changing the software our bookkeeper uses. It's still QuickBooks, but it's now a virtual version of it. So as an example, she doesn't have to be in church to do her job. She can do that home through her computer at home. And like one of the treasurers could be online with her looking at the same things when they're collaborating, instead of both having to set up a time to meet at the church. And with our bookkeeper working part-time and our treasurers usually down in Florida, I'm just kidding. Jim's not online, so he didn't hear that. But anyway, we want to do that with some of our other software too, is use cloud versions of that which has such great advantages that, you know, when the company that writes the software doesn't update, it just happens. Because, you know, we're using the software's running off the cloud. And the backup to the data, it happens every day. They take care of that. So it'll just improve the efficiency. Our hope is it improves the efficiency in the way we can collaborate with each other. So those are the goals for that we have as a leadership team. So any questions or comments on that? Okay, then I will look for a motion to approve the leadership's goals. Anybody want to make that motion?
I'm on.
Okay, thank you. And a second? Second back here, thank you. Any more discussion or questions?
Yeah, Mickey, I know.
You made the motion, but who made the second?
Jason. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Pat. Okay, all those all those in favor of the leadership's goals for next year, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, the next area we want to look at is the report from the Nominating Committee, and that is on page 56. Okay, what this report shows is new members on the different committees or ministries or officers, or people that are already on these ministries that are starting a new term. So those, when people are new or they're starting a new term, you as members of the church need to vote and approve that. So that's what this report shows is who are the people that are re-upping for another term on a ministry, or they might be new. And you can tell they're new if it says first year of their first term. That, as an example, on the leadership team, Chris Moll is joining leadership if you approve him, and he will be in his first year of his first term. So that's how this reads. So there are obviously several people that our church business is conducted by these committees and groups, as you all know. And we do have just a couple of openings. As you can see, we are looking for a co-treasurer, and those are highlighted in red in that report. And there's nominating does have a couple of open positions. And stewardship has one opening, and the Memorial Garden ministry or committee, association committee, has 2 openings. And personnel needs 1. So if anybody is interested in those positions or wants to join, simply raise your hand and you're in. Thank you, Lois. Which committee would you like to join?
The Memorial Garden.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So Lois Jackson is volunteering to join the Memorial Garden Association. Thank you, Lois. Are you making a note of that, Pat?
Yeah.
Okay. Deb?
I would join spirituality.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. So you get that? Deb Palm is going to be joining spirituality. Deb Burson? Sorry. Yes.
Can I just make a comment about spirituality?
Sure.
Hold on. You got a microphone though, so the people on the left can hear you.
I can yell.
I know, but we can't hear you on the west.
Just a correction for that. The way it's listed for spirituality, it shows that there's 4 people that would be starting the first year of their term. Judy Schuyler is actually rounding out the second year of an open vacancy. So it would be Deb Groscroft, Dave, and now Deb that would be all starting their first term.
Okay. Deb, there's an issue for you. You are on the Pastoral Search Committee, and as such, until that committee is dissolved, you can't be on other ministries. So,
I don't think, it's only leadership. It's only leadership.
oh, that's only leadership?
Because Andy Meckel is on stewardship.
And so am I, I'm on spirituality.
Yeah, you can serve on ministries, you just can't serve on ministries.
Oh, okay, all right. Thank you for the clarification. Appreciate it. So you can then. And thank you. You'll be a great addition. Okay, looks like,
I'm Mickey Kellner, I have just one clarification. Generally speaking, if someone's on a ministry, they can also be on a project group or a committee, but they can't be on a second ministry, correct?
that's not stated anywhere in the
So you
Constitution.
could be on more than one ministry at a time?
The Constitution is silent on that. It doesn't say yes or no. So, good question. We have a question in the back.
Sue Zajac.
Hi, Sue.
Hi. I'll go on Memorial Garden with Lois and you.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Barb?
I think as a part of the nominating committee, we always said that you could only be on one ministry.
Right.
So honestly, I'm not sure, I don't know that I've checked the Constitution for that, but that's what the way we.
That's kind of
Yeah.
that's kind of an unwritten rule, then,
It was designed to work that way.
you know, we should probably
Get it in
add
the-
that to in the or it'd be actually in the bylaws.
Right.
So we could do that.
Okay.
We can't do that here because we've got to do it,
Right.
you know, we could do that at the spring meeting. Yes, Rochelle?
Is it something that we would want to have that flexibility and not put it in our constitution or our bylaws? If somebody chooses, I mean, that might be our recommendation, is only be in one ministry at a time. But if somebody chose to do two and they are retired and have the time, do we want that flexibility?
Yeah, that's the way, right now, the bylaws don't say anything. So really, we could have, but then the kind of the unwritten rule, so I think it would be good to clarify that, I think. Yes?
I think it was originally because they didn't want all of the same people. It was to keep it from being just one cluster of people on all of the ministries. It
Yeah.
was so that we spread that
Right.
out.
Well, that makes sense, but actually, we could not vote them in at this meeting
Right.
if that started to happen. So there is a governor that we could use on that. That's good. Well, why don't leadership will talk about that over the next couple of months and kind of let the congregation know what we would recommend, but that's a good topic for discussion. Yes, John?
Two things. First of all, could you go over all of those additional names that people that volunteered for the new positions that are open? It's hard to hear if you could just go over those before we vote. And the second question I have is that I know we haven't voted on the constitutional changes yet, but they very well eliminated the responsibilities of the personnel and the Pastoral Relations Committee. In the booklet, it says that the Pastoral Relations is inactive per Pastor Berry request. Could you explain why that's
Yes. Yes, I can.
inactive?
Yep, perfect. I was not writing down the names. Do you have those, Pat?
Yes.
Please?
Lois Jackson and Susan
Yeah.
Zajac.
Yeah.
Lois Jackson and Sue Zajac will be on the Memorial Garden, and Deb Bersinger is going to go on to spirituality.
Okay.
Anybody else want to volunteer so I can add you to my list?
Okay.
Boy, you know, since I've been coming to these meetings, that has never happened, that people have volunteered at the meeting. Thank you. That is just wonderful. It really is great. Thank you. Thank you. And John, to answer your question, the interim or part-time pastors have the option to ask for a pastoral support group or not, and Pastor Barry opted and said, I don't need one. So that's why the group is dormant right now. And then when a new minister comes, when we do have a new full-time settled pastor, actually the way the Constitution reads and the way the conference recommends it is that a portion of the selection committee, the search committee, becomes the pastoral support group for, I think it's 6 months or a year, I'm not sure which, but it's specified in the Constitution. So after that, then we would be forming that committee at that time. Does that make sense? Okay, perfect. Okay. Any other questions or concerns? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve the nominating report. So I need a motion. Rochelle? Okay, thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Okay, I think you were first, Tim. Okay. All right. So I'll call the vote then. All in favor of the nominating committee report with the additions of the people that's volunteered today. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Although opposed, say nay. Okay. Thank you. Motion carried. Wonderful. So we've just got really maybe two positions. Yes, question? We need a mic.
I do have a question. Do I recall correctly that we have, I'm sorry, I'm Lynn Zawaska. Do I recall correctly that we have a membership committee?
We have a new membership committee that just formed. Yes. It just barely got formed, yes.
Okay, can you tell me, is one of the responsibilities of that committee or one of the tasks they're taking on reviewing our membership and reaching out to people that we have not seen in a while?
No, that is not one of the specific tasks of that group.
Who is coordinating that committee?
Coordinating
Or a chairperson or?
Of the membership or the one that's?
No, membership.
Rochelle.
No.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, the chair for that is me. I was thinking the communications committee, sorry.
I guess my suggestion, recommendation at this point in time, based on the last 2 years and our inability to have connected with a lot of our membership, would be that that's a task that group takes on as soon as possible, so that we're not just looking at generating new members, but that we are reaching out to confirm who's here and that they feel missed and wanted.
That's a great suggestion, thank you. It is. Typically, that job responsibility falls with the settled pastor, but obviously without that, somebody should be. I mean, nominating did try to reach out to several people who we haven't seen for a while, but it was kind of more in the spirit of, do you want to join a ministry? So that should be done. I wholeheartedly agree. Thank you for the suggestion.
Bob?
Yes.
Mickey Kellner. Ordinarily, that task is one that the clerk and the office staff work through to make sure. Are you talking about removing people that are? No, you're talking about reaching out to retain people. Okay, I just didn't want us mixing up those tasks because that one is already handled by somebody else.
Right. good discussion. Yeah, Rochelle?
I'll just make a comment. And earlier this year, leadership had a list of some people that we hadn't seen for a while, and we each took on 3 or 4 people to connect with them. And we wanted to do a second list, and it just never happened. So we need to move forward on that.
Right.
It's always challenging to get in contact with somebody live. You leave messages, but we just need to continue to keep doing that. So thank you, Lynn.
Is Brian Hahn still doing weekly attendance?
Yes.
So he would be a good resource too.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. The next thing we need to do and work on is the proposed changes to the Constitution. So before us today, there are 2 changes being proposed to the bylaws that affect the Pastoral Relations and Staff Support Committee and the Personnel Committee. So there's two different proposals to change, one for each of those committees. The discussion really could be about both together because they're kind of related. So we can discuss both at the same time, but there will be a separate vote to vote on each of the 2 proposals. So if you could refer to pages 53 to 55 in the annual report booklet, the revisions and changing the Constitution or revising the Constitution and bylaws, it's not uncommon in the life of the church to do this. Since 2010, we've changed our bylaws 8 times, the last being 4 years ago. So it's not something you necessarily want to do every meeting, because hopefully you've got, a good constitution. But as the church evolves or as things change, we need to add things. And like the change from 2018 that was voted on is just being able to allow people virtually to vote. So technology, mandated we change the Constitution for that. So as to change the amendments or to change the Constitution, there's some rules and some procedures that have to be followed, and I just want to make sure you know that where we are with that. Any proposed amendment must be presented to the membership at least twice. The first time was, you have to be notified of the potential change 10 days before the second. So more than 10 days ago, you received an email with the proposed changes. So the second time you're looking at these is today in the meeting. So that's how we, meet those specifications in the Constitution. To change the bylaws, it requires a majority vote by the congregation, and we have to have a quorum for that to happen. So we have a quorum, so we pass that test. And the 10-day requirement is passed as well. So we do have the ability, should you want to pass or not pass these proposed changes. I've just got a little summary that I want to talk about as to maybe, because it might help with the discussion. So over the past couple of years, the roles of these 2 committees have been under the microscope or under the purview of, they were kind of at the center of a problem that was going on in our church with, trying to clarify the responsibilities and procedures to resolve conflicts that we had between committees or between staff members. And the current bylaws, the way they're written, didn't address certain situations, and as a result, the conflicts were kind of not impossible, but they were really hard to resolve because there was some confidentiality issues, and he said, there were some things going on that just, by following our bylaws, it made it very difficult to resolve these situations. So we kind of, opened the door up to these committees and groups and said, how can we fix this? And so both committees worked on it, and we actually got our conference heavily involved with this and had the lead conference minister and one of his support staff come up here and meet with us. And they shared with us several other churches, congregational churches' bylaws and how they structured these two committees and what they felt were the best practices. And as a result of all of that work, and believe me, this has been a lot of work, and led in large part by Pat Evans, who is, a 20-year professional human resources person. And so we've got some experts working on this. So thank you, Pat. So anyway, pulling all that together, all that input and reviewing all that, the result of that is what you have before you to approve now. And so as proposed, the Pastoral Relations Committee is responsible for supporting and the well-being of the pastor. Note the big difference. The staff support portion of the title of the old one is not there. So that committee's goals and job and responsibilities is to work with the pastor and support him or her. And actually the way it's recommended is if we had, some churches have 3 ministers, there would be a separate committee, pastoral support committee, for each of those ministers separately. Now we don't have that, so we'd have one group. But their job is to support and work with the pastor. Okay? The Personnel Committee is responsible for all of the staff matters. And in both cases, the pastor does work in coordination with the committees and makes the appropriate decisions and administers the processes and procedures to avoid and resolve conflicts. So the way the prior Pastoral Relations Committee worked is they were also a place where the staff could go and talk confidentially with the same group, but that group couldn't then talk to the minister about it, and if the minister was having problems with the staff, they couldn't sit down, the 3 of them, and work it out under the old structure. So that's what's different and new with this current structure. And it's very clearly spelled out who's got responsibilities for what and how they interact. And yes, we've gotten some feedback that, boy, those things are pretty wordy and there's a lot of detail in them. And it's mostly on purpose that we've tried to look at all different situations and spell out in our bylaws how they should be handled. Part of the problems with the old structure is there was several areas where it was vague. And when it's vague, you can't do anything. So anyway, I hope that helps just a little bit with the background and where we are with the current situation. So I really want to thank Pat she's got weeks into this, literally weeks. And, she's a professional. She really knows her stuff. So anyway, and leadership was involved in a lot of the discussions along the way, and we looked at the proposed changes and did vote as a leadership team in December this year, just last month, to approve those. And, but it's up to you, you know, so that's why you have before you now, we can vote on approving these or not. So the first thing we do before we can, you know, discuss and talk about this is we need to be working on a current motion. So I need a motion to accept the proposed changes. This is the first one now, for the Pastoral Relations Committee first. So could I have a motion, please? John Evans, thank you. And a second? Lois? Okay. All right. So as it regards to the Pastoral Relations Committee, are there any questions or comments from, okay, John?
Just a real quick question. Amy is not considered a pastor, is that correct?
That is correct. Yes. Good question. Yes, Jill?
Hi, just a clarification. If there is a church member who has an issue with a pastor, does that go through pastoral relations?
That would first go to, Pat, where would that go?
Well, he's part of our staff.
Oh, right, that would go to the personnel.
So,
That would, you're right, that would go to personnel. And one of the differences, well, yes, that would go to personnel. And then if the pastor wanted to work with his support group to talk about it, he could do that confidentially with that support group. But the issue of to resolve the issue with the member, it would start in personnel, and if personnel thought leadership needed to get involved, then they would get leadership involved.
So I was actually on pastoral relations for years. That's why it's a really interesting topic. So the role of the new Pastoral Relations Committee really is just to act as a support function for the pastor. They are not then reaching out to any other committees, people within the church, leadership, etc., based
Correct.
on those confidential conversations, and that obviously the pastor understands that.
Correct,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Good question. Yes,
Bob, who is the pastor responsible to?
the pastor is responsible to you, the congregation.
In terms of evaluation, who's responsible
Oh,
for
good,
evaluating the pastor?
great question. That's the Personnel Committee. The Personnel Committee does the pastor's review annually. Yes, and that's been that way for years and years and years. Yeah, that's not the pastoral support group's job, is to do his job review. Good question. Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, we have one no and a whole bunch of yays. Motion carried. Okay, the second one then is the Personnel Committee. And so I need a motion to approve the changes for the Personnel Committee. I need a motion first. Jim Sajak. And a second? John Evans, or I'm sorry, John Kyle. So we've got a motion and a second. Any questions on that committee? Yes, John.
Could you just announce who the current members of the Personnel Committee are, if you know that?
I do.
Because there is one opening, I believe.
Yeah, well, I know, who's all on personnel, Pat? Hold on one second.
people who are on the Personnel Committee right now are myself, and I serve as a chairperson. Lois Jackson is on the committee, and I think this is Lois's second or third year. And Kelly Bradley Young also serves, and last year was her first year, so she'll be going into her second year. And yes, we would really like to have another person come and work with us on the Personnel Committee.
Right. Yeah,
It's one of those positions where not too much goes on unless there's a little conflict. And then we're really busy. And of course, in the old bylaws, there were only 4 things that took place, and that included job descriptions, keeping the handbook up to date, making sure we were in compliance with any state and federal law, and then recommending raises. So that position has been expanded so that we do have a true personnel committee now, so that the pastor and the staff can all come to the personnel committee and get their questions answered instead of wondering what's going to happen. And also in the past, the pastor has been totally responsible for handling all of those staff problems. And we all know that our pastor is very busy here. And so we did work with Pastor Dave to handle as many things as we could with him and through him. But, you know, even Jesus needed help. And so we need to make sure that we're not overloading our pastor with so many details of things that he can't do his job as leadership of this church. And so we do need a true personnel committee to be able to handle those kinds of personnel needs.
Thanks, Pat.
Mickey Kellner again. So that committee is under leadership. I mean, that's an offshoot, that leadership, they report back directly to leadership.
Yeah, and leadership appoints that
Okay,
group.
it's a
Yes.
standing committee, but it's
Yes.
under the auspices of
Yes.
the group. Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay,
Good,
thank you.
good question, good clarification.
Swell Shopper. So is the Personnel Committee in charge of the annual review of each of the jobs of the personnel involved in church?
Good question. No, all the staff positions, like the bookkeeper and the custodian and our youth minister, the evaluations for those people is done by the minister.
By the minister.
By the minister. And in this year, with the absence of a full-time minister, that was done by me. So I did the staff evaluations this year. Yes. Do you have more?
So is there any documentation as to what the expectations are for the evaluation so that the people who are working know what they have to do?
Oh, absolutely. Part of what personnel does is they are responsible also for complete and thorough job descriptions for each of those positions. And so
the
that's
personnel, I'm just a little confused. So the Personnel Committee is in charge of job descriptions, but the evaluation of the staff comes to the pastor.
correct.
And who evaluates the pastor? The Personnel Committee?
Yes. Yep. Yep.
And I can tell you that I think with the pandemic, I've lost the whole year here, so I think it's been 2 or 3 years that the Personnel Committee did meet, and we spent time with each one of the staff members and the minister and developed job descriptions so that each one of those staff members know what their responsibility is, and the pastor does use that job description to determine what their expectations are, and they are both involved in putting together those job descriptions, keeping them up to date, and then going through the evaluation.
Is there any self-evaluation?
It depends on how the minister wants to do the evaluation, and when Pastor Dave was here, he kind of changed his focus each year so that it wasn't just the same cut and dry evaluation. So in some cases, he did ask them to self-evaluate themselves. And this last year, when Bob did it, he asked each of the staff members to evaluate the other members as well as themselves. So there was a lot of feedback that came from that, and each one of them had an opportunity to make goals and to say what they wanted to do to maybe grow and change in their jobs too.
And Pat, that information was given to the search committee too.
Yes, yes. The search committee was made aware of what Pastor Dave's responsibilities was, and then they developed a new job description from that. So the candidate is fully aware of what this church expects of them as their job description. And anyone who wants to know what the job descriptions are or looks like, please let me know, and I'll be happy to pass those on to you.
Bob?
Yes.
One of the issues in the past has been the timing of those evaluations. They need to be completed prior to the budget being established for the next year, because one of the things as part of those evaluations is a recommendation to the budget committee for potential raises. There's been an issue in the past where those evaluations have not occurred until November, December, and that's really made it hard for the budget committee to make those decisions. Is it, again, I don't want to do this yet, but is it appropriate to add an amendment to this proposal to put a date that those evaluations should be completed by?
I don't think we want to put a specific date, but the personnel committee has worked into them. There isn't, I don't think we need a specific date because it comes down to the minister having to have time to get that done. And I can tell you that I don't know how it was done before I went onto the personnel committee, but we start talking with the pastor about doing the evaluations in August. And then we sort of put a pressure on that pastor to get it done by September. And so it's going to be a lot of things that have to do with the timing, but the personnel committee is the one who is trying to direct that so that we get that job done so that we can make a recommendation on time.
Yeah. Thanks, John. And Pat. Okay. Well, I think we've got a motion and we've got a second. All those in favor of approving the proposed modifications to the bylaws for the Personnel Committee, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passed. Thank you. I know these are always interesting discussions and great discussions, and a lot of good clarification needs to be made, and I just thank you for hanging in there and listening. I've just got a couple of final comments, and then we can call it a day. I just want to thank you for allowing me to be your moderator this last year. I really do love this church, and it's because of you all and the family we've got here. You know, and words are also impossible for me to come up with to describe the dedication and effort that your church staff puts in and Pastor Barry over this past year. It's been incredible, and people have done things they've never done before, and they've filled in for, it's not ideal, but they made it work, and they made it work well. And so I really appreciated that. They were great partners for me, and many days we had some fun too. And that's part of life. You got to have fun doing things. So, and we're all partners. All of us in here are partners. And I'm going to leave you with a question to end this meeting, and it's the same question that I asked in my leadership report. And that is, and I didn't plan it this way, it just happened. The sermon today was about, what else you can do as well. But I want to ask you, how are you helping your church do God's work? There are so many opportunities, as you know. And when this church comes together and works on something, it is really amazing at what we can do. And the most recent best example of that is last fall's rummage sale. My God, it was amazing what I mean, it took an army and we had an army. And the army had a good commander too. So that was such a good wow story. So we are the church. You are the church. So I urge you to find your way to help us do Christ's work. And that's different for each of us. And yeah, coming to worship is a big part of it, but then what? But then what? So we can do so much together. Let's keep at it. All right, unless anybody has any other comments, I'd like to entertain a motion for us to adjourn. Valerie, motion to adjourn. I need a second from Bonnie. Any further discussion, questions? I'll call a vote. All in favor of adjourning? Anybody opposed? All right, thank you, we're done.
Sorry for